Hello! Forgive my wobbly footage, I'm actually holding the camera at the moment. So I actually went on holiday. It was really great. We got away from Melbourne for a week and we went up to the top of my state of Victoria and went along the Murray River, which borders between Victoria and New South Wales. So we stopped in Mildura and Echuca. These are two towns along the way, and we had a really great time. So today I thought I'd show you some of our trip. I filmed quite a bit of footage while we were up there. I didn't do a lot of art. I did bring my art bag though, and it worked really well. I found a bit of time to do a few drawings in my sketchbook, and I'll show those in the video as well. So I know we've all been locked away in the last year or so and not much travel has happened. I thought you might like to just see something different and do a bit of armchair traveling with me. So let's get into the videos that I put together. I'm doing a big voiceover for all of it and hopefully it's not too boring. I will be getting back into art, but I'm still kind of in holiday mode and it is very hard to do. Ah man, as you see, I did not miss a video, so I actually recorded a whole bunch of stuff before we went and uploaded it. So I had videos scheduled for the whole time that we were away, and I'm back down to no videos recorded in advance, so I've got to do all of that. But I just thought this one might be fun and you could see what we got up to, so let's get into it. We had a great start to the holiday with torrential rain for large amounts of the 6-hour drive up. But then there was a really pretty rainbow that came out, and unfortunately I couldn't stop to take a photo because there were trucks right behind us. And a bit further up in the small town of Red Cliffs, we saw Big Lizzie, which is this huge tractor thing and is, I guess, one of Australia's many big things, and here's my little drawing I did in my book of it. This is just before Mildura. Now we're in Mildura itself, and we had to come to my favourite gem shop in all the world, Woodsy's Gem Shop. This is the rock tumbler they use to clean all their gems, and here are all the beautiful polished rocks that go for about $2 each, and I ended up with a whole bunch of them to add to my collection. And it's just an amazing store. There's so much in here. There's a cafe at the back there, and there's all sorts of different kinds of gems that you can imagine. So it's a really wonderful place to go, and I highly recommend it if you are ever up in Mildura. Here's the page that I did with a lot of the brochure cut out into it, and I also added in a list of all of the gems that I bought, because I'm never going to remember what they are when I've taken them out of their little baggies with the name tags in there. You may notice that some of these, like malachite, rhodonite, serpentine, sodalite, these are also paint pigments. So one day I shall have to compare the paints with the actual gemstones. So here we are at the mighty Murray River. Thankfully all of the rain had gone and we were left with some really bright blue skies and pretty mild weather, although it did get really cold in the following days, so the temperature dropped by a lot and it was in single digits. It wasn't the greatest weather for drawing outside, so most of the drawings I did were from photographs and then I drew them in the hotel rooms in the evenings. But it was so good to get away and just look at something different. It's really pretty up here. We even spotted a kangaroo out near the car, and it's not very good footage unfortunately because it wasn't going to let me get near it. I was going to do a drawing of this historic house, but I haven't got there yet. I took some photos instead, and that's a future artwork. We also decided to go on a paddle steamer because that's what the Murray River is famous for, all of its old paddle steamers. This is the one that we were going on, which is the PS Rothbury. There's also the PS Melbourne, but that one was out of action at the moment. I think they couldn't make it safe for the pandemic, so they've just got this paddle steamer going for now. But this one's quite a beauty, and we got there early so we were able to see it come in, and I got some footage of it. So this one runs on fuel and is a bit more modern, but you will see later in the video a steam-powered paddle boat. But they were both really nice. This one was much larger than the second boat we went on, which was a lot older. We really did get lucky with the weather, and this was the nicest day out of all of them, so I'm really glad we picked that day to go on the boat. I did have my sketchbook with me, along with my entire art bag, but really I just could not be bothered and I wanted to enjoy the boat ride, so I didn't do any sketching. Oh well. It was really pretty along here. These are some of the houseboats, and there's a caravan park. That's looking over to New South Wales. The river is the border between the two states. There were lots of photo opportunities. I really wanted to get pictures of some of the different boats. I think this one is privately owned. It used to be one of the paddle steamers. And look, there's a tiny little one. That one's so cute. Up around this part of the Murray River, there are a few dams or weirs, and so they have locks that you have to go through. And this is lock 11. So basically the boat gets tied up, the back gates close, and then the front gates will open after the water level has changed. So in this case, they needed to drain the water out. It is a very slow process closing those gates. Just look at it. This is real-time footage. It took forever. But it was quite interesting at the same time, and eventually they closed. So you'll see that in a moment. There we go. The two parts of the gate closing together, and you can actually walk across that. So there's one walkway, and then the other gate has another walkway, but that one was opening. So now the water is slowly draining down. It's just like a huge bathtub with the water draining down the plug. I thought this was really fascinating actually, and it went down heaps. It wasn't just a little bit, it was quite a few meters of water that they drain out. And here it is after pretty much all of the water has gone, and then they opened the other gate on the other side, which I don't think I managed to film. I forgot about that. Oops. But you can just see that water level's really low, and here we are emerging out of the other side, back to moving again rather than being stuck in this tiny little lock. There you can see where the boat was. It's not very big. So the boat cruise was 2 hours long, and it didn't go super far, but it just went around the different parts of the Murray River. Here is where they actually built the dam, or they call it a weir, up there. So that was quite pretty, and it's just a bit of an inlet. The main part of the river is on the other side of that weir, and that's the bit that we actually went up, and then we came around and did a loop to this side, so that was pretty cool. We also then came back out onto the main part of the river, and then we just cruised up it for a while before they turned the paddle steamer around, and back we went. It's very much Australian looking scenery up here. Here's the flag at the bow of the paddle steamer, and you can just see how amazingly still that water is. It was so pretty. Mildura is not a very populous area. Once you get out of town, it's all pretty much farmland, because obviously this is a very fertile area, being that there's a lot of clear, fresh water. But there are houses dotted along the river, like this rather fancy one, and so it was nice to see where people live and imagine myself living there. Although, I guess if the river flooded, you might be in a bit of trouble. So yes, it has its good points and its bad points, I imagine. But here we are coming back. That's the tributary that goes down to the weir. And at this point we were headed back to the lock, because of course we have to go back through that again. And it's pretty much the same thing again, but just in reverse. So the gates will shut behind, and then the water will fill up and lift the level again. So you can see there's a few people up there. It's like a thing that everyone comes to watch the lock work a few times a day, and you can see the gates very slowly closing. Oh my goodness, it took forever. Finally! Actually, it was more interesting than it kind of appeared at first glance, and I was amazed at how fast the water filled back up. It really came gushing out, and yeah, it was fascinating. You can see those people up there watching in fascination as well. Then once it's full, the other gate can open, and another little bit of a wait here for it going. And this is going past that weir. We were on the other side of it. That was the tributary just over there. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So coming back into dock, we then decided to go over the bridge and cross the river to New South Wales, just on the other side. And our next port of call was the Holden Museum, which neither of us had ever been to, and we thought we might as well check out. And it was actually pretty cool. I mean, I'm not super into cars, but I do like vintage ones, and they had all sorts of really neat ones starting from the 1940s going up. Holden is a company that does not exist anymore. They actually closed down a couple of years ago, so these are all that are going to be left over time, I guess. But yeah, some of these really early ones, weren't they just a work of art? Old cars, just the way they built them, and they're just so shiny, and just, oh, I love them so much. So this was really pleasing to see. Modern cars are not so interesting by comparison, but the really old vintage ones are pretty neat. And they had quite a variety in their little collection. It's not the hugest museum in the world, but it was pretty substantial. And funnily enough, in Echuca there is another Holden Museum, but we didn't go to that one this time because one was really enough, at least for me. I do really love that pink one. I could totally drive that. Ah, they were so cool. They don't make them like they used to. It's also interesting how the shape of them changed from the 50s and 60s to the 70s and 80s. They went from very round to quite boxy, and you can still see some of these on the roads. Holden is a very Australian company, and it's very sad that it no longer exists. Where? Moving along, we went to some inland botanical gardens, and in case you're wondering what the heck it is we're looking at, those tiny little red blobs are called Sturt's desert peas, and I was just amazed at how many there were. The last time we were up here, there were only a few of them dotted around, but this time there were heaps, and it looks like they've been irrigating them to actually get them to grow. But they are just so pretty. I mean, look at that amazing red colour. And these are found all around the Australian outback, and I'm pretty sure they're edible because they are part of the pea family. But just look at that amazing colour, and there were so many clusters of them. I was fascinated by them. They do grow on the ground, and so they're not necessarily always easy to see, although that red colour does give them away. But yes, this was really cool, and I'm so glad we went back this time. So that was a long day, and I ended up making a collage, cutting out bits of pamphlets and sticking a couple of stickers in there, and I also drew a little sketch of the Sturt's desert pea. So a few other highlights was the Wentworth Jail, one of the oldest prisons in Australia, and this was pretty cool. It just happened to be open this day. It normally wasn't meant to, but they had a whole bunch of tour groups, and that, such as life, is a Ned Kelly quote. It was a little bit annoying. It had quite a lot of Ned Kelly stuff at this prison, but he was never there at all. I really liked that tree in the middle of the prison yard. That was my favourite bit of the whole place. Very pretty. The rest of it was pretty depressing. And then we found ourselves at the junction of the Murray-Darling River, where it splits into the Murray River and into the Darling River. The Murray goes along the border, and then the Darling goes up into New South Wales. Really pretty along here, lots of ducks, and a really peaceful place. I enjoyed this very much. I also climbed up this tower to get a better view of the river. It's not that bad, it's just a spiral staircase and wasn't very high. I got up there pretty quick, and it's a much better view, and you can really see the junction of those two rivers there. So after a few days in Mildura, we packed up our stuff and continued our road trip. The next stop was just a brief one to Swan Hill. And there really isn't much to see in Swan Hill, except for the giant Murray cod. Australia has big things dotted all around it, and it is our mission to see every one of them. We've seen probably about half of them, but this one was really cool. And on the New South Wales side, there is the big Murray cod, and I drew it into my sketchbook. So the second part of our trip was spent further down the Murray River, and this is Echuca. This used to be the largest shipping port in Australia for a while, and it was considered to be the Chicago of the South. You can see the river is much lower here, and there are no dams or anything to make it higher, so yes, there's a lot of old equipment and things from Victorian times, and they've kept a lot of the steam engine stuff, which was quite interesting. So we decided to do another boat ride on the only paddle steamer that's actually in use currently. Quite a few of the other ones are in for maintenance. This one's the paddle steamer Alexander Arbuthnot, and this one is quite a lot smaller than the one in Mildura, and it's also steam powered, so that was pretty cool. But here's a little bit of it coming in. Nick and I got on the boat first, so we went up to the top and sat at the bow of the boat. It was freezing that day, that wind was brutally cold, but it was so much fun and I didn't really care. I was rugged up in a really warm jacket. And off we go. You can really see how low the river is, and that's through a lot of drought, which has been going on for years. But here is the old wooden wharf, and that other boat there is the paddle steamer Pevensey, which is awaiting restoration. Here it is a bit closer in. So this was a 1-hour ride, and I'm kind of glad of that because it was really cold, and by the end of it we were all pretty much frozen through, I think. Here's one of the more modern paddle steamers, the PS Canberra. And what is it about being on a boat that you have to wave to other people on boats? I always do it too. But all down the river there are so many houseboats, it's really cool, and I'd love to spend some time in a houseboat. You can rent them, but it's not cheap. They're building another bridge across the river, and it's a bit hideous at the moment, so I hope it looks a bit nicer once they've finished it. I was also interested in the mechanics of the boat. Here's the paddle going around, it made such a racket, and then here's the steam engine with someone attending to it, so I just thought that was really fascinating. It's not something you see every day, an old steam engine, and one that's actually fully functioning, so it's a great bit of history. Look, they even let Nick steer the boat. And they gave out first mate certificates to all the children, but I'm a big kid and I insisted that I get one too. Yay! I filled in a couple more pages of my sketchbook, one with the little paddle steamer that we'd been on, and then I just did a really loose painting of the river. Look, more vintage cars. There was a big old Sunday market on the weekend that we were there, so we checked it out. They had music, there was loads of different stalls, and yeah, someone singing country music. Always in these places it's country music. But it was not bad, all things considered. And on our last day, we went out of Echuca to a small town in Kyabram, and they had this really cool little wildlife park. And of course our first stop had to be the reptile house, where we saw the most venomous snake in the world, the inland taipan. Here's a couple of them. Aren't they cute? I actually think they're really pretty, but you would not want to get close to them. On the sign it said that one bite can kill 100 men, so yeah, that's pretty insane. Here's a common death adder, another venomous one. And then we come into one of my favourites, which is the green tree frog. These are so cute. I took some photos here because I forgot to take video footage, and this is a frill-necked lizard. He was watching me very closely. It's so cute. And then we came across the insect house, and the zookeeper was actually cleaning it out at the time. And because we were the only people there, he actually brought a couple of them out for us to see. How cool are they? They're so massive and just amazing. This guy had no fear when it came to insects and let them crawl all over him. He even extended her wing out so we could see it. Then back outside, another keeper came out with one of these blue-tongue lizards, and this one we were allowed to pet. She was very placid, and they have such smooth scales. It looks slimy, but it's not. It's very dry, and I just think they're really fascinating. I love reptiles. Her name is Godzilla, and she is much larger than they normally get, so probably because she's been in captivity. She was quite old, and he'd put her down on the grass to have a bit of exercise. Not that they go very fast, but she was dragging herself around, and we spent quite a lot of time out there chatting with the zookeeper because we were pretty much the only people in the park. It was Monday, and there was just no kids or anything like that. It was fantastic. One of the best zoo days I've ever had. We went through one of the walk-in aviaries, and they had this princess parrot. I've never seen one before, but it was very tame and it was making so much noise. Man, it was loud. It took a liking to Nick and kept landing on him, probably because he was wearing glasses, and you know that parrots always tend to go for those. But it was just making so many funny noises, it was hilarious. So many noises. On my ear. Ow! So oh my god! Then there was a cockatoo that was just hanging out by my feet, much quieter. I think she was a bit lonely because there weren't very many people, so she allowed me to stroke her head. I was a bit wary because I've been bitten by a cockatoo before, but this little one was so lovely and she just loved getting a little head scratch. Oh, it was so cute. Then she let Nick scratch her head as well. Aw, I love wildlife parks where you can be interacting with the animals. Speaking of which, they also had some dingo pups that had been born in the zoo, and they were super friendly, like regular dogs. I mean, these are wild animals, but this one came up and even gave a little lick to the hand. Normally you would not be putting your hand near a cage with a dingo in because they can be pretty brutal, but these ones were just gorgeous. They were just like a domesticated dog, and we managed to get a little pat. That's not something that either of us have ever experienced before. What a gorgeous animal. And here they are hanging out. Their parents were in another enclosure, so they were a lot more wary and didn't come up to us, but these ones were really fun. Then we found some kangaroos to feed, with pellets provided by the wildlife park. They have such soft mouths, but my hand was just covered in saliva after that. It's so gross. There was also an area where you could go in with the kangaroos to feed them, but somehow we managed to miss that. Oh well, we had fun with these two ones that were hanging out. This is the big male. Sleepy wombat. They're so cute, but they are nocturnal, so they sleep during the day, but they had a glass area where you could view its sleeping quarters, so that was pretty cool. We found a couple of emus that were highly interested in our food. These birds are so scary, they're really huge, and I was a bit freaked out, but I fed them nonetheless, because I am a sucker for punishment. Come on. Open heck, man. Just about to take your hand off. I don't like this. Wee. Ow. I just like totally went for my thumb. Ow. This is really terrifying. And after that trauma, let's finish up with some gorgeous koalas. They'd woken up and were eating their afternoon tea. They are so beautiful. These ones are southern koalas, so they are very large and fluffy. There are ones that are in the northern parts of Australia that are quite a lot smaller, but these guys were huge, and I guess that's what you get for living in captivity and eating and sleeping. That's basically their life. But aren't they beautiful? I love koalas so much, and it is always a pleasure to see them. And this guy was just hanging out in the sun, and I just loved the way his fur was being lit up. Look at those fluffy ears. Om nom nom. So thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this little video. It's a bit different to what I normally put out, but it's the first time we've really had a holiday since 2019. So I hope you enjoyed this little holiday coming along with me. And I will see you all again really soon in my next video. I'll be back to filming art videos in the next one. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all again really soon. Here's my favourite photo. Swatch you later. Bye!